I've eaten a lot of raccoon. Yes. The answer is yes. And I've eaten it hunting. I've actually had it served by my mom at the table away from her. And I have eaten raccoon. And yes, it's not uncommon at all. I'll tell you something that is one of my favorites is squirrel. And it's wonderful. And my mother could do a great job of it. And we all had our favorite pieces. And my dad and sister, I have one sibling, a sister, and they would fight over, not fight, but my mom and I, they were just, my sister and I as for a sibling, my mom and I wouldn't even ask for the brain in a squirrel.
Oh, man.
And delicious, seriously.
My dad loves cow brain.
My sister always got it, or my dad.
A fight over the brain.
Well, good morning, good people and Eagle fans. Mark Holmes here, of course, with my buddy Cowboy Joe Boo, as well as Joe Bear in the house. And as always, I want to say thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. You know, sometimes you got to go back to your roots. Don't sleep on the Dallas Cowboys because things happen late in the evening, late at night, and first thing in the morning. So you want to be up to speed with everything that is the Dallas Cowboys. And you know what? I am going to say that this is a different Dallas Cowboys. That the Dallas Cowboys are actually, oh my God, I don't even want to say this, but I want you to understand something here. You are seeing, excuse me, the Dallas Cowboys of the 90s. Now, before you go ahead and laugh, insert joke here, Mark Holmes has lost his damn mind. He's crazy. He's literally had too much coffee with rum in it or something. Yeah, insert jokes. No. Okay, enough laughing. No. I want you to understand, here's what's going on. The Cowboys, when Jerry Jones bought the Dallas Cowboys, he ended up hiring a coach that people looked at and said, you're hiring a college coach here? Cowboys were irrelevant. They were losing $2 million a month. And they fired Tom Landry, a great coach who'd won multiple Super Bowls, well respected in the NFL. And they hired a nobody. And they started off with a team that was old, aging. You know, we basically held on from the 70s through the 80s, got old, and did not resupply. And here's the thing that they did was they made move after move after move. And not every move worked for them. They brought in player after player. Some players that people were kind of like, meh, why are you bringing this guy? Why is this guy getting a chance? Why are you bringing him here on your roster? Guys like Nate Newton. Nate Newton, with the Washington Redskins, was there with them, and they ended up cutting him because they said, you're too fat. You're not a baller. He goes to the USFL or whatever the league was then. The Cowboys bring him in, work him out, and make him one of the great offensive linemen. The Cowboys didn't per se build everything just from the Herschel Walker trade. And I'm going to give you proof of this because this was one of the greatest things that I ever did. And I know so many of you have seen it before. Sorry, but it's relevant to where we are right now, because what the Joneses have been doing for the last 30 years until now has been the polar opposite of what got them to winning Super Bowls, where you're bringing in guys, you're bringing in masses of guys. Right now, we've brought in a mass of players. Running back, Javonte Williams, of course, signing Miles Sanders. Of course, we got, not Rico. We let go Rico, but Vaughn, that's in there. We've got, of course, now drafting Blue and I keep saying Mustafa, but it's not Mustafa. But you know who I'm talking about. But now we've got all of these guys to pick from, and you pick the best ones. You make them fight it out. On the offensive line, what do we got? 16, 17 offensive linemen? You're only going to carry about 9 of those guys. You're going to figure out which ones are the best ones of those guys. Defensive front, we've drafted some new guys like Donovan Easy. We brought in veterans, back like Dante Fowler. You got young guys that are now put on notice from Sam Williams, who's coming back from injury, who it's shit or get off the toilet, that may be fighting to stay on the roster. You've got Marshawn Nealon. You've got those guys that are going to have to fight. Nobody is anointed like D-Law. D-Law, you are, of course, the high-paid player. You, of course, have your spot. You're the de facto leader, God, la, la, la. You got guys that are hungry. But listen to Jimmy Johnson here.
You're up, and then James Harris.
Jimmy Johnson, let me first say congratulations on getting into the Hall of Fame. Watching that live on television, that raw emotion was just beautiful. I have so many questions for you. I think about the only way I could get them in is to get a cooler of beer and head out and go fishing with you.
Hi, Mark.
But leaving the University of Miami and coming to the Dallas Cowboys, and at that time they were basically broke, busted, and thoroughly disgusting to watch. Having gone from the pinnacle down to the depths, what was that like? And the second part of this question would be, I played football at JMU with Charles Haley, and knowing the character that he is and all the personalities that you had with the Cowboys, how were you able to mold them and keep them focused on the grand prize, which was winning?
Well, first of all, people look back on it and they say it was an easy decision to leave University of Miami. But we had gone through 4 straight seasons where we played a national schedule and been on national television every other week and only lost 2 regular season games. And so we had a powerhouse football team, and I knew it was going to continue that way because we had a great, group of talent. And then going to Dallas, Tom Landry is one of the greatest coaches of all time.
Mm-hmm.
But they had 3 straight losing seasons. They were at the bottom of the NFL at 3-13 because they just didn't have any talent. And and obviously there were some older players that helped us, in winning our Super Bowls. But a lot of it had to do with, I brought in Tony Wise, my offensive line coach, and he put together what is considered one of the greatest offensive lines in NFL history. But he did it with a free agent defensive tackle, Mark Tuinei, at left tackle. He did it with a left guard where the previous staff said get rid of him because he was too fat, Nate Newton. We took a 3rd round pick, 245-pound offensive guard. I asked Tony, I said, can you convert him to a center? He said, I'll make him into a center. So we moved Stepnoski to center. And then we took a 7th round pick, Kevin Gogan, who had struggled his early years. We moved him to guard and took a 3rd round pick, Eric Williams, at right tackle. So, those players hadn't developed, but Tony Wise was able to develop them into a great offensive line. And so, the combination of having some great assistant coaches and acquiring a lot of talent with 51 trades in 5 years, we were able to win that Super Bowl. So it was a great feeling.
Thank you very much on that.
I'll follow up about Charles Haley.
Yes, he was a character.
He is a character, but he is one of my favorites. Charles and I developed a great relationship after a few rocky roads there early in his career at Dallas. We had a couple of run-ins, but we really got together. Really, he came in my office after I had berated him a couple of times at one of the ball games. And he said, Coach, he said, if you will just get on to me one-on-one in your office, he said, I'll do anything in the world for you. I love playing for you. He said, but just don't embarrass me in front of the other players. And I said, Charles, I may not always be able to do that, but I'll try. But from that time forward, we had a great relationship, and he was a big part of us winning Super Bowls.
Thank you very much. And how about them Cowboys?
I should have trademarked that.
James Harris.
Okay. So here's you heard what he described there, right? That, they had some older players that were veterans and things, but it wasn't all high draft pick players. That offensive line was literally a defensive tackle, a 7th round pick, and Eric Williams, a center that was a converted guard that was undersized, a big fat guy that people said to get rid of. And the thing is they hadn't developed. Listen to me. They hadn't developed. It was the coaching staff that developed them, took them all together, and made them great. So when you see the Cowboys, what they've been doing this offseason, what you'll notice is this is not how the Cowboys have been doing things. This is the polar opposite. I've said it a couple of times. Typically, the Cowboys go to training camp with holes that they know, that we all know. We sit here, we talked about wide receivers last year, that we need more of them. We said that going into, but well before training camp. We talked about linebackers. I literally remember, I think it was 2 years ago, maybe it was 3 years ago, but going in, having conversations about the only linebacker we had on the roster with any experience was Leighton Vander Esch. And Leighton Vander Esch was always one bad hit away from being on injured reserve. We all could see, hey, we need a linebacker. We all wanted to bring in a Bobby Wagner, a veteran guy. Of course, we were told he's too expensive and too old, be that as it may, that would have been a good move. I talked years before that about wanting to bring in DeMario Davis. Again, people looked at it and said, that's too expensive. But when you have a veteran who hasn't missed a game since he left the Jets in like 2017 and has been the heart and soul of that defense, you look at it and say that would have been money well spent. But be that as it may, same thing with Calais Campbell. But you have to have a mix, and you have to keep a conveyor belt of players and talent coming in with coaches and scouts that can recognize the talent and coaches that can get the most out of them. And for the most part, we have not done that. We've waited till after training camp, to bring in players and say, oh, we can go get this guy because he was released and he's cheap and we'll throw him in here and we'll expect to have Super Bowl results. No, it doesn't work. The Cowboys now have gone away and take a look at the guys they're bringing in. They're not bringing in veterans that are 30 plus, with the exception of Dante Fowler. That's the only guy they brought in that's over 30. They're making a youth movement right now on this roster. They're turning it over with guys whose potential, like Jimmy Johnson said, has not been realized yet. The onus is on them because they're at a crossroads of how their career is going to end. They perform just like Pickens. Pickens is in the most incredible position right now. Pickens now goes from having some of the worst quarterbacks over the beginning of his career, to say what you want, insert joke, insert laughing now, but going with Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys, having a CeeDee Lamb where you are not the whole focal point, is going to be incredible for his career if he stays healthy. And he knows all I have to do is be a solid citizen and perform. And somebody, be it the Cowboys or somebody else, is going to back up the Brinks truck for him. That's what you want to do. And if you don't know how good a move this is, we heard that the Cowboys were interested in Rashad Bateman, who is, Ravens wide receiver, that was the guy that they had targeted at first. He's been in the league a year longer than George Pickens, on a better team with a better quarterback, although they are more of a running team. You sit here and you look at the numbers. Let's take a look at these numbers here. You look at it, you've got Pickens averaging per catch 2.5 yards more than Rashad Bateman with bad quarterback play. being the only real target that you have to worry about. And here's the thing that's amazing to me is you're throwing the ball to him 2.5 yards further, and you're only 2% less in catch percentage. The further you go down the field, the harder it is to make a completion. His yard per target is a full yard plus more. So you look at that and say, the Ravens wanted more capital. You got George Pickens for less capital with seemingly a bigger upside and a guy who's motivated to perform. And when you also think about some of the other guys, a lot of us, talked about, oh man, we should sign Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams, who's $22 million a year for the next 2 years, who's 32. 32. He's 8 years older than George Pickens. You got a guy who is still learning the ropes and performing, and you've got him in your system for a third-round pick. And for those out there saying, that's too much draft capital, look, mother humpers. No disrespect to Jalen Tolbert, because I love Jalen Tolbert. But if I'm looking and saying, I spent a number 3 for Jalen Tolbert, and I spent a number 3 for George Pickens, it's not even close. Not even close. And what I'll point out with this is now your offense can really be more balanced. I know everybody's going to look and say, oh, man, Dak's going to throw for 6,000 yards. That's not what you want, bro. That's not what you want. What you want to have happen with the Dallas Cowboys is you want to see Dak Prescott about 4,000 yards. And I'm going to point out the Cowboys with Tony Romo in 2014. 2014 was one incredible season for the Dallas Cowboys. And the reason being is that offense was balanced. You had DeMarco Murray, who rushed for 1,800 yards. 1,800 yards, which, of course, made everything a lot better for the Cowboys, okay? We were third in rushing attempts and number 2 in yards running the football. Believe it or not, Tony Romo was 31st in passing attempts, 16 in yards, but number 4 in TDs. And the reason being is because the Cowboys were able to run the football and because it wasn't literally relying on every game Tony Romo winning the game for us. It's much like what the Eagles had this year. Oh, shit! Oh, shit! No disrespect to the Eagles, but because you were able to run the football, when you passed the football, because teams had to respect the run, it made you that much more effective. Tony Romo had 37 TDs, only 11 interceptions. And the reason being is, because he had 4,903 yard seasons, but they weren't winning the same way. Unfortunately, we got the catch no catch that screwed us over. But the thing is that team was able to perform with Tony Romo at an advanced age because they were balanced, because they had good targets, because you had too many people you had to stop. You had Des Bryant with like 1,300 yards. You had Cole Beasley. You had Sam Hurd. You had, Jason Witten, your tight end, had 1,100 yards that season. And so you couldn't stop everybody. You could stretch the field, and Des Bryant would be the guy to go up and get the football for you. You had Jason Witten, who was your possession receiver, and you had an offensive line that could block and open up holes for DeMarco Murray. And that's what you want. You don't want to be singular focused where you're just a running team, because we've seen like the Titans with Derrick Henry that really are just a straight running team, but they can't do it because they couldn't pass the ball when they needed to. You don't want to be where we're just throwing the ball constantly deep, and where we're literally winning or losing by Dak or Tony Romo's arm. You want to have doubt on the defenses. That's the bottom line. And that's what we haven't been able to do. And this is where it's exciting, because now the Cowboys seemingly with Brian Schottenheimer are recognizing that we have to get the talent. We have to bring him in, and we have to have a coaching staff that's going to be able to coach them and get them in the best position to succeed. Now, the great thing is when you're the Dallas Cowboys is when the Cowboys do something, everybody eats. Listen, Good Morning Football. Oh, my God. Just check them out. Listen to this. So great. Isn't that the case with a lot of players out there? That they could be great and they could not be great? But here's where it gets to be funny. Because this is how you realize that the Dallas Cowboys drive the needle. Listen to these fools with them. This is literally just trolling the Cowboys for hits. And I'll be honest with you. It worked. It worked because I wasn't caring about what Good Morning Football was saying. I didn't even realize it was back, on television anymore. But they trolled us to the point where we're talking about it. So we know. What I want to say to all of them is,
shut the fuck up. Shut all the way the fuck up until you reach the top of Shut Fuck Mountain, where there are no more fuck-ups to shut.
That's what I really want to say to all of them. But that's all good, because I would rather the Cowboys continually get disrespected. If I'm George Pickens and I'm hearing all this stuff that I was a cancer and that, I'm dog doo, I'm not going to make a difference on the team, it doesn't move the needle, that motivates me even more to perform. And I don't want the Cowboys, I would rather actually everybody continue to trash and beat the Dallas Cowboys down. Beat them down. Tell them you're not crap. Tell them you suck. You sorry. Light a fire underneath of them. Light a fire underneath of them. Now, I can't say 100% that what the Cowboys have done is going to work, but I like the fact that we are bringing in so many players and we're doing it before training camp. Through these OTAs and the mini camps, you're going to start seeing the cream rise. You're going to start seeing the guys that you want to really focus on in training camp. Instead of training camp being on, we got to figure out who's staying, who are our guys that we need to focus on. Let's get this out of the way now so we have an idea. We know who the top three at each position is going to be, so we start focusing on that. And then we can fine-tune it when we get to training camp on who's going to be that starter and who's going to be the backup, who we're going to keep. Get as much work done now and continually look at this point. You've got money, and instead of looking at players to say, we got a hole at linebacker, we got a hole at, cornerback and things on the waiver wires. You're now looking at who's a guy that can improve a position for us that we didn't expect. And that's where you want to be, where you are taking, not just filling in holes to get to basic, that you are actually elevating the team and the roster. All righty, good people. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you guys. And I can't thank you all enough for all that you guys do for the Jobu Sports Report. Peace out. Oh, don't forget, take care of Mama tomorrow. Mother's Day. Don't forget. Peace out.